Alright, so welcome back to the Pause Family Podcast. I'm here with the people that have been here in the past so they can introduce themselves.
Brian.
Holly.
Faith.
Ethan. Devin.
We are talking about preparedness.
Food storage.
Heavenly Father has lovingly commanded us to prepare every needful thing so that should adversity come, we may care for ourselves and our neighbors. Planting a garden, even a small one, allows for a greater degree of self-reliance. If you don't have traditional garden plot, you can plant vegetables and herbs in containers that fit on driveways, balconies, roofs, and even windowsills. Growing a garden can be interesting and rewarding for adults and children alike.
So I have something from the church's website, and you just touched on some of it. But on the church's website, it says, "Our Heavenly Father created this beautiful earth with all of its abundance for our benefit and use. His purpose is to provide for our needs as we walk in faith and obedience. He has lovingly commanded us to prepare every needful thing so that should adversity come, we may care for ourselves and our neighbors and support bishops as they care for others. We encourage members worldwide to prepare for adversity in life by having a basic supply of food and water and some money in savings. We ask that you be wise and do not go to extremes. With careful planning, you can, over time, establish a home storage supply and a financial reserve." So what are some of the things we should have in our food storage? There's three main components of food storage according to the church. One is food supply with a 3-month and long-term, a water supply and financial reserve. And they encourage us to store foods that are a part of our normal diet in your 3-month supply. And as you develop a longer-term storage, focus on food staples such as wheat, rice, pasta, oats, beans, and potatoes that can last 30 years or more.
So it says take the amount of food you would need to purchase to feed your family for a day and multiply that by 7. That's how much food you would need for a week. Once you have a week's supply, you can gradually expand to a month and eventually 3 months and so forth.
So for longer-term needs, and where permitted, gradually build a supply of food that will last a long time and that you can use to stay alive, such as wheat, white rice, and beans. A portion of these items may be rotated in your 3-month supply.
So make sure your food storage is properly packaged and stored in a cool, dry place. If water comes directly from a good pre-treated source, then no additional purification is needed. Otherwise, pre-treat water before use. Store water in sturdy, leak-proof, breakage-resistant containers. Consider using plastic bottles commonly used for juices or soda. Keep water containers away from heat source and direct sunlight.
So how much does this cost? Cost may vary depending on where and how you purchase your food storage. It is important to remember that you should not go to extremes. For instance, it is not prudent to go into debt to establish your food storage all at once. Develop it gradually to diffuse the overall cost over time so that it will not become a financial burden.
So how much does it cost?
It depends on what you're buying and how large your family is.
Well, for example, you can just buy tons of ramen noodles, which are cheap. They're pastas,
If
so
that's
they can last.
If that's your only food storage, diet.
Yeah.
I also think it's important when you think about garden stuff, you want to get different types of seeds, and you're going to want to pay attention to your soil. And there are different types of soils out there. So you've got a soil that's more clay-like, soil that's has more organic material in it that's better for it. And then you've got, high acidic, low acidic, and rocky soils, sandy soils. So you want to pay attention to your soils for garden.
Soils.
And silty soils.
Which is what you want. You want silt.
Yeah. So you want to pay attention to your soils for the garden side of it, because the more silt-like material you have, which is basically a lot of just decayed, leaves, stuff like that. It's all almost like the silk of all the dirt, like the silk version of dirt.
Silt.
Yeah, but it's like it's a silk version of dirt rather than having it be like a hard rock. Or
okay, so this is what I was taught in Intro to Ag. Silt acts exactly like graphite. It slides which the chemicals that bond to make silt is exactly how graphite is made, but with the different chemicals. So silt is a slippery substance.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the kind you'd want in order to grow fruits, vegetables that have more delicate roots that are smaller. So let's say you live in a clay soil, like where we are living right now. You have to, over time, add more organic material to make it more silt-like and more spaced out. So the good thing is what you want to do is you want to add more different things to, like different topsoils. You can mix that in to help get it up there, small wood chips and things like that. And then on top of that, for like a clay soil, you're going to want to dig kind of like a trench, have like a little bit of a mound to plant your stuff on, because over time as you water it, it'll run off and stuff will go down and the water will run down into the clay part and kind of sit there and eventually dissolve into the clay. And you have to have the mound, because if you just had like a straight flat bed garden, it would just turn into a big rock and nothing would be able to grow. But there are different types of foods you can grow that will have the ability to break up the soil a lot more. So there's different kinds of, like, at least one I know of is like a turnip or
Onion.
Not onion. It's a turnip or
Beet.
Yeah, beet. There are different kinds of beets that have, when they grow, like a carrot or something like that, they have a big root that you eat, and it'll grow down and make a giant cavity space in the ground and causing it to open up more, versus if we were to grow, I don't know, do peas have delicate like roots? If you think like grass has delicate roots. Stuff like that has got small, tiny roots, like your veins in your hand versus your capillaries.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a correction. Because you said the place where we eat of a radish or beet is a stem, or is a root. It's actually the stem. The root is at the bottom of the stem.
Yeah, but the one I'm talking about is just the big old, like, it has like a big...
Parsnip, probably.
Things that grow big in the soil is what you want to help break up the soil.
Root vegetables.
Yeah.
Vegetables need at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. The garden site should be relatively level. If there is a steep slope, run rows of plants across it to prevent corrosion. It says it's a good idea to spade or mix the soil to a depth of 12 to 14 inches, adding organic matter such as manure, peat moss, or leaves, because that will benefit the soil. It says to be careful with fertilizer. All fertilizer has a 3-digit code. For vegetable gardens, look for an 888 or a 161616. The simplest way to eliminate plant pests is to remove insects, worms, or eggs by hand. Some shake-on powder or liquid bug sprays are relatively safe to use. Proper depth for planting seeds is approximately 4 times as deep as the seed is thick.
Now for like a clay soil, worms would actually be a good thing in different bugs. The bugs that won't eat your soil, but see, with the clay soil, we don't have a lot of bugs already there, because I'm used to soils that have a bunch of bugs all throughout it or in the area. And around here, at least for this clay soil, there isn't a lot of bugs in the ground. But it's a good idea for the worms to be there, because, again, they act kind of like the roots. As they eat stuff, they eat the dirt, they leave behind a richer dirt and waste for the plants to grow off of, and they break up the soil, creating space for the roots to grow down into. So a clay soil would be good to have worms in.
Actually, the worms eat the decaying matter, and so that they decay even further as they poop it out.
That's my point. And then they create a tunnel where the roots can grow down into, making it, so it's a lot better. It's a softer, mushier tunnel for them to grow into, and perfect for their growth. So for a clay soil, it'd be good to have worms.
So for those who are just starting out and may not have a lot of money or space to store food, the First Presidency is mindful of that, and they have said that they realize that some of us may not have the financial resources or the space. Some of you may be prohibited by law from storing large amounts of food, but they encourage us to store as much as circumstances allow. Because in the end, Some is better than none. And it's a start. So even if you're starting out now, a start is a start, and you can always add to it from here.
One thing I want to point out, if you can ever get yourself like a shelf that slides, like the stuff we see at Walmart or whatever, you can set stuff on a shelf and it'll slide forward or has the ability to slide something forward. That's probably a smarter way to go about it for circulating things, because if you set stuff up on a flat shelf, you got to go back to the back and push stuff forward and then set the things behind it. And a lot of times if you have it stacked up or something like that, it'll be just a big hassle to stack and move things forward, versus if you've got a tilted shelf or a sliding shelf or something like that, where it can come out where you can just grab and put in different places. Things get in the way, and so it'd be best to have like a sliding shelf or a tilted shelf where you can set stuff at the top and it just rolls down into its place. Kind of like if you think about how gumball machines work, when you put the thing down and it rolls all the way down to the bottom. If you can build something like that for cans or water, like you have a tilted shelf on the top and things slide down to the next one like they would at, say you go buy water at Walmart, at the top they have this tilted shelf for stuff to slide down. They call them quick slides or something like that. 'Cause a lot of times on newer ones they have like little wheels that kind of push it forward, but things like that, if you can find a way to build it or look up a tutorial on YouTube to how to build something of the sort, probably be a good thing for you to do.
Now, speaking of shelves, I have watched soda pop vendors as they put new soda in. They move the old soda either to the left or to the right, depending on which side of the cooler that they are in, and then they put in the new soda, which on the side where there used to be the old soda.
Okay, so it says members of the church have been counseled for many years to be prepared for adversity. Preparation, both spiritual and temporal, can dispel fear. With the guidance of the church leaders, individuals and families should prepare to be self-reliant in times of personal and widespread tragedy.
But the main hope, like over time, is that you won't have to actually be using this food storage if you believe that. If you believe like what we do, we believe that we'd hopefully be able to be in Zion and not necessarily need this food storage, and that the hopes is that we do it on faith, and then we'll be able to go to Zion and help build that up, and where the land will be good and plentiful for planting, and that we'll basically be saving it for someone else that isn't quite ready for it yet to be there. So that's doing it on faith and hoping to be ready for that.
So President Spencer W. Kimball taught that we must be anxiously engaged in a positive program of preparation. It is not enough to hope for the best, we must prepare for it. He explained the Lord will not translate one's good hopes and desires and intentions into works. Each of us must do that for himself.
What does that mean?
That just hoping for it, thinking about it, isn't enough. You actually have to go out and do the work to be prepared.
And I have a thing here from Prophet Gordon B. Hinckley about emergency preparedness. So this is what he said. We have built a grain storage and storehouses and stocked them with all the necessities of life. In event of a disaster, but those goods cannot help us if we cannot reach them. He continued, the best storehouse is in the family storeroom. And this is the enzyme or Leona where it's in. If ye are prepared, ye shall not fear. Then that was in the November 2005 enzyme or Leona. Now back to what he was saying. It's the most accessible reserve in times of need, and the best suited to our individual needs. And as you build and maintain emergency supplies, include the following items: clothing and bedding, drinking water, financial reserves, important documents, long-term supplies of basic food items, medication or first aid supplies, 3 months supply of food that is part of your normal diet, a way to communicate with your family following a disaster, obtain first aid training or otherwise to prepare for an emergency, to receive first aid, CPR, and AED training through a certified program.
Okay, so I found an emergency preparedness questionnaire. And for your vehicle, it says, how full is the gas tank of the vehicle you drove today? Does your vehicle now have in it a shovel, jack and tire iron, tow chain or strap, spare tire, booster cables, tire chains, basic tools and box, working radio, extra oil and transmission fluid, map with secondary roads, first aid kit, axe, hatchet, or saw? And then it has emergency evacuation kit. Do you have an emergency evacuation kit? Does it contain at least 2 means of starting a fire in addition to flammable materials? Tent, tarp, or shelter large enough for your family, warm sleeping bags for at least every other family member, food to feed your family for 3 days, a means of purifying water that may be polluted, drinking water sufficient to sustain your family for 3 days, flashlight for every other person with an extra set of batteries, warm clothing sufficient to stay out of the doors all night in wet, cold, or snow conditions, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, a poncho or raincoat for each family member. Does each family member have adequate footwear? Extra pair of socks for each family member. Do you have a means of carrying the kit should your vehicle break down, run out of fuel, get stuck, or roads are not passable? Can your kit be divided up so each person could carry their share? If family members are not home, do you have a meeting place when leaving your home who is responsible for turning off the water, gas, and power?
I also want to point out that Ezra Taft Benson, when he did a thing on food storage and temporal preparedness, he had said that along with that food storage for the 3 months and beyond that point, you want to get it set to where you're not necessarily getting fat off of it. It's just enough means to survive. So you'll be uncomfortable, but you're living. You're not dying. Because if you were to store beyond that point, a lot of it could go bad, or you might have people trying to steal from you or something like that. And then you could lose all of it.
So I have a list of foods that are good to have in your long-term food storage. And dehydrated carrots and non-fat powdered milk have an estimated shelf life of 20 years. Apple slices, potato flakes, pasta, rolled oats, and pinto beans have an estimated shelf life of 30 years. Sugar, corn, white rice, and wheat have an estimated shelf life of 30 plus years. So if you can get some of those foods into your food storage, that's a good start. That'll last you a long time.
White rice? Brown rice?
White rice.
Why not brown rice?
I don't know.
Because white rice has been treated.
True. It's enriched.
It's been bleached.
Ew.
I mean, brown rice could store a while, could it not, if it's dried? I honestly see rice as like a seed, isn't it? You can plant it in the ground and grow rice.
Yes, it's a seed.
So
wait, what?
You can plant rice in the ground and it would eventually grow into
You should do that in the
rice
garden.
things, right?
We cannot plant rice in our garden.
You have to get like regular, like you'd have to get the actual rice seed though.
Yeah.
Which rice is the rice seed, but that stuff that you buy on yourself is like treated for, so you can't grow it. Honestly, they take the ability for it to grow out of it, so you can eat it.
And rice only grows in a water-covered marsh.
Every family has a responsibility to provide for its own needs to the extent possible. The responsibility to manage family finances should be shared between husband and wife with an attitude of trust and openness. Wise financial management can provide security and promote family well-being. Members may experience financial troubles due to unemployment, overspending, unexpected emergency, or mismanagement of finances. Paying an honest tithing, living within your means, saving for unexpected expenses, and avoiding debt are essential parts of financial stability.
So, on the lines of financial stability, since this is a podcast, I want to get your guys' opinion or question. Do you think it's smart to buy gold and silver? Because it's hard to trust the U.S. dollar anymore because it's got no financial backing and they eventually plan to just switch it all to digital currency. But if you got gold and silver, that's something that has value to all the countries. And I know the Chinese dollar, which is what's up and coming to be the higher thing, they back their stuff up by gold. So they've been buying a lot of gold to back it up to it. And so what do you guys think?
I think you have to have money on hand, but with just gold and silver, I don't know.
To me, I think it'd be good because if you have to,
if you can get your hands on it,
if you have to sell it to the Chinese people, they might say, well, we're only going to give you so much for your gold because they're the ones in the power spot of it.
So it says spending less money than you make is essential to your financial security. Avoid debt with the exception of buying a modest home or paying for education or other vital needs. If you are in debt, pay it off as quickly as possible. Successful family finances begin with the payment of an honest tithe and the giving of a generous fast offering. The Lord has promised to open the windows of heaven and pour out great blessings upon those who pay tithing and offerings faithfully. If our tithing and offerings are the first obligation met, our commitment to this important gospel principle will be strengthened and the likelihood of financial mismanagement will be reduced. Says
do you think it's
to teach family members the principles of financial management, involve them in creating a budget and setting family financial goals, teach the principles of hard work, frugality, and saving, stress the importance of obtaining as much education as possible.
Do you think the possibility of why it'd be easier or for them to spend less money, because when they give money and sacrifice, which is good, that it'd be a little bit harder to work with it, so then they learn how to financially take care of things better, maybe?
I don't know, but I do know that President Nelson recently reminded us to live simple, to, don't have the best of everything, but to go, do you need a TV? Do you need the internet? Do you need some of these things that you might have? Do you need 4 cars? Go to one if you can do it.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever lived the best of anything.
Well,
we've never lived the best of anything. I mean, for you, you were a girl. Well, when you were a girl, you had to poop outside over a log. So you've never lived the best of anything.
Yeah, that's the world needs to know that.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying,
we've never lived
those memories that I have.
Way.
Those were good memories, and I
pooping over a log,
not pooping over a log,
in the
but
winter?
Just having to bath outside under the stars, or
that'd be cool.
Having to haul water because we didn't have water for the house. Those are good memories. It was hard work, but you look back on it now, and I'm glad that I had those experiences. Wish you guys had some of those experiences.
I'm glad I did not have to bathe under the stars.
How many people live in the city and never experienced farm life and know nothing about it?
Yeah, like the kids today, which they don't even have as much experiences as kids growing up in the early 2000s.
Are you talking about yourself?
Which going outside and playing, or actually having to do work, which when they're kids and not having allowances.
Anyway, the experiences you get are for your good, and you can look back on them fondly and be glad that you had those experiences. And it will help you with these things that we've been talking about as far as being prepared. And anyone else have anything to add to this preparing?
Think about it. Put an honest effort in for it. Storing seeds of all kinds that you would be growing or thinking you would grow and eat. Learn how to grow those seeds. Storing those things, learning about the soil, learning about all you can to help yourself in that way, as far as making shelving units that would make it a lot easier for you to cycle things so you can build a come or have a better functioning thing, more automatic, rather than having to take more time out of your day to resituate things, because everyone's time is already precious and they need to be using it elsewhere. And if you spend your time reshuffling your shelf rather than putting something at the top and it rolls down to the bottom and you get the next one in line kind of thing, it'll take a while.
One other thing that we should mention is that we should learn the different weeds and stuff that are edible, if need be, if you know what ones to look for.
Natural foraging.
Yes.
Birds do that a lot, actually.
That is also a part of preparing for calamities.
If you want to know some of the best foraging, definitely watch the birds and other animals and see what they eat. Because I know some bugs, I wouldn't watch to see what bugs eat because they eat each other and themselves and other things, but things you'd consider eating, like certain birds or certain squirrels, watch to see what they eat, because if you think you could eat that, well, if they base their diet most off of something like nuts, berries, and seeds, try to find those different types of things, because obviously they're finding food somewhere.
But some animals are able to eat stuff that humans cannot eat.
And we eat a lot of stuff they can't. Like plastic.
They can eat it. We just don't let them.
You were saying something?
The stuff that we're talking about might seem silly or pointless to a non-member, but you need to do it because it beats starving.
Yeah, because whether you like it or not, there's obviously a financial crisis coming in the next few years, anywhere between now and 15 or more years from now, because of all this crazy spending they've been doing in the government lately. And so it's going to implode the dollar a lot, to the point where
Nothing political.
it's going to destroy. I mean, our value of our dollar is only based on whatever the stores say it's valued at, or other countries at this point. So having a food storage while you have the money to purchase those things would be good, because eventually they could say $1,000 for, I don't know, a $20 to $30 or maybe a $50 thing. It just depends on how bad it gets. So do it while you got the means, if you have the means. Otherwise, stick to what they said and do it over time to make it possible for yourself. And